Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I'm going to be giving you a double helping of gameplay in Tier 9 heavy tanks. And firstly, I'm going to be playing the one that everyone is really excited about right now, especially when they're opening their Engineer's Gate, and that is the Chieftain prototype. I've already done a full tank review on this vehicle, so if you want to know the full ins and outs of the brand new Tier 9 British heavy tank, I thoroughly recommend you go and check that out. But firstly, before I talk to you about why I don't think you should gamble to try and get this vehicle, I thought I'd show you my best game in this tank so far. And also, funnily enough, this was the first game I also played in this vehicle, so maybe I was just ultra focused to try and have a big game right off the bat on this vehicle, or maybe it was beginner's luck. Well, that remains to be seen. So I've played this tank, I don't know, probably about 20, 30, maybe 40 times now. It is a very comfortable vehicle to play, and considering it is a Chieftain, come on, it's a vehicle. I've never participated in clan wars, so I've never had the joys of playing the FV4201 Chieftain non-prototype at Tier 10. So getting to have an idea or a flavour of the gameplay at Tier 9 while also making credits and making bonds, you can make 100 bonds a week playing in this vehicle, has actually been quite a fun experience. After a while, however, you do realize that this vehicle it's kind of boring. It doesn't really have any flavor, it doesn't really have any soul. Sure, it can just sit on a ridgeline and be absolutely dominant, but outside of that, the vehicle does end up feeling like it's quite lackluster. Kind of lacks the firepower, kind of lacks the gun handling, and while its mobility is not bad for a heavy tank, there's a concept in the game, and lots of people have it, especially those who managed to participate and do well in ranked a few years ago. And so this vehicle, it's old faithful, it's definitely consistent. It's kind of the 122 TM of Tier 9, but the issue is that while the 122 TM has got way better armor than pretty much all of the other vehicles do that it's fighting against at its tier compared to all of the other Tier 8 premium medium tanks, I'm trying to say, this one just... Tier 9 feels like it's so much more competitive, and unless you get yourself into a nice matchup like this, where you aren't fighting against all of those Tier 10s with big alpha damage, then you can struggle. But whoa, did you hear those ricochets? That was 4 ricochets on the trot. And in this kind of a situation where your opponents are forced to attack you and you've got a lovely ridgeline between them, you're super strong. Now, if you're wondering why I'm sticking my gun to the right so much, I talked about this in my full tank review. Thoroughly recommend going and checking that out. And that is, if you stick your gun to the right, this bulge on the mantlet here actually protects part of your weak point, and it makes it a much smaller target for your opponents. And this thing's turret armor is so darn good that outside of getting shot by maybe Tier 10 tank destroyers with their premium rounds, that you don't even really have to worry about getting shot in the side of the turret. But be careful, if you do over-angle it like this, then the part of the back does become a bit of a weak point, so you have been warned. So one thing you might immediately be noticing is, wow, the gun handling on this vehicle does look rather awful, right? That's because it's got 0.37 accuracy and it's got 2.7 seconds aim time. But to add to that, it's also got pretty bad dispersion values when it's moving and when it's turning the turret. I must add, however, that as this is my first game in this tank on my main account, that I did not have all of the field mods that will help with the accuracy and help with a variety of other aspects on this tank, such as the reverse speed, which can be very nice for pulling back over a ridgeline. But that does actually lower your turret reverse, but I don't really have a problem with that on this vehicle, because it's more about just getting your gun on target rather than having to turn your turret directly to what's in front of you when you need to ricochet them. Think about an ST2 or an E100, for example. Those tanks are constantly having to turn their turrets to try and protect their armor. And on those kind of vehicles, I do like to sometimes use a rotation device because they don't really need the improved gun handling, and sometimes turret reverse is very important on vehicles with about 18 or 20 degrees a second base. Intuition switch there. I want to highlight just how nice the ammunition is on this vehicle. Having APCR rounds as standard is not actually as good as having AP rounds unless they have really good shell velocity. Luckily, in this case, the Chieftain prototype is packing 1,150 shell velocity on its standard APCR rounds, and on its premium rounds, 310mm of penetration. Doesn't quite have the grunt that Heat have, but 1,350 meters a second shell velocity is lovely, and you can snapshot like a boss in this tank. Later on, I actually ended up taking, when I've got my extra field mods, a turbo with this vehicle. But on a map like this, we really don't need a turbo. As you can see, it's all decided on the hill. It's all decided in this hull down grind fest. And we're up to 3,900 damage. We've blocked enough damage to kill our vehicle a couple times over already, and there's still pretty much at least 33% of the team that we're going to have to deal with. It's a nice shot there to the top weak point of the 50 TP. This vehicle, it just, because you can sit in front of your opponents with complete immunity, it does allow you to spend that extra time aiming for their weak points. And so I've just never felt so safe playing this tank. As I said in my tank review, that was my overall conclusion of this vehicle. But I want to stress that while you're seeing this vehicle perform admirably in a situation like this, I've had so many games where I'm just averaging quite poor damage results. Although my spotting has been really good in this vehicle because I always try to rush it into a forward position with its decent top speed. And I kind of end up actually getting pretty much as much spotting sometimes as I'm also doing damage. And that's purely because of the low damage per minute that this vehicle has. That fairly long reload for 400 alpha damage, 2000 DPM. Even with a gun rammer and vents, you can't really get it up to a high point. But good marksmanship like that does help. That's a tricky weak point to hit on the top of the 50 TP, and now we're up to near 5,000 damage. Although right now I am slamming gold rounds, probably thinking that there was a possibility of a miracle here in my first ever game in the Chieftain on my main account. So I get nailed in the side there by the T103, great shot, but at least we managed to finish off the, well, not finish off, but we managed to get a big old shell into the Chieftain, and then my Stridsvagn K finishes them off. And it looks like that T103 was a little bit greedy there, but you've also got to respect them for actually trying to make a play before we managed to finish off the hill. And we shut them down, we follow it up with another shutdown on the 50 TP. We reverse up, turn our guns slightly to the right to try and protect our weak point here. And hopefully the tortoise is going to overturn. Boom, right into the top of the weak point of the tortoise there. Now his hand is forced. He's going to have to go after the TNH VZ51. He can't get caught out in this open here, otherwise I'm going to get to farm him up. And while my rate of fire is not good, it's not that bad. And so we managed to get an extra round into the side of the tortoise. And hopefully this 430 is also going to expose their armor. My TNH VZ51's doing a good job there, and I actually end up missing the lower plate. The reticle, or shall I say the aiming indicator, was actually green there, so I thought, I trusted it that it would be able to go in, but really I should have gone through the lower plate there. So the tortoise hopefully just exposes a bit more of his weak point. We put one more round in, now up to nearly 7,000 damage dealt, although we have taken 8 minutes pretty much of continual brawling on the hill to be able to achieve this. And do I need APCR gold for that? Nah, why don't we reload the a cheap HE round there, and also try and pretend like we haven't been spamming gold for the last 3 minutes and load a regular round. And whoa, look at this. Yeah, pose for a nice QuickyBaby thumbnail. What are you doing, you donkey? There's another tank to kill. Or maybe I didn't think that I was actually going to be able to get towards the bat chat or have a chance. So the Teenage VZ51 gives me a thumbs up. I press affirmative. It was a nice battle on the hill there. And we come out of this pretty much having done a third of the entire team's health in damage, and also picking up 5 frags in this battle with 6,900 damage dealt. And oh dear, is this bat chat really going to do this? No way, no way. Oh, that's a freebie right there. Well, you know, I guess it's over 7,000 damage now, and we also pick up a top gun to boot. So look, you might be thinking, well, QB, you're telling us not to gamble to be able to get this tank, but you just showed it absolutely dominating on a ridgeline. Well, let me do the maths. So every time you open up one of the engineer's gates, you have a 1 in 50 chance of being able to get one of the 12 tanks that are available. So you've got a 1 in 50 chance. Now, if you don't have any of the tanks, that means that you could get any of the 12 vehicles, right? So that is going to be 50 times 12. Very complicated maths here. You have a 1 in 600 chance of being able to pull a Chieftain out. but you've got just as much chance of getting a KV4 KTTS, a Chieftain T95, which is pretty stinky, an M4Y, which nobody really cares about, and a MIL 1951, which is good, Astron Rex, which is good, a VK7501K, which I think is good, but a lot of people despise, Renegade, which is good, Skoda T27, which is fun but disappointing, Kampfpanzer, which is definitely a good one, Alt Proto, boring as you like, and the M48A2 Raumpanzer, which a lot of people have been saying is absolutely horrendous, but I think is a bit of a meme itself. So that's the reality here. And what you need to do if you want to figure out what your chances are is add up all of the different vehicles that you don't have and then times it by 50. And that is your chance of being able to get the specific vehicle that you may be wanting on this list. Horrendous stuff. Now, here's the real. There is a way for you to get the flavor, or even a better flavor, of the Chieftain prototype just through the Battle Pass. I think you might see where I'm going with this. And yes, for 9 Battle Pass tokens, or at least I think it's 9, and correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, you could get yourself this. This is the Tier 9 American Heavy Tank. It is the AE Phase 1. And I'm going to let you know why this vehicle firstly doesn't require you to gamble up to $600 to, I guess, to be guaranteed, if you were to get that unlucky, to get a Chieftain, as well as also 11 other premium tanks. This one you can just get for playing whatever vehicles you want, and you're guaranteed to be able to get it. And you're going to have pretty much the same flavor of gameplay as you would do if you were playing the Chieftain. And it starts AE Phase 1 versus the Chieftain here. And we start by avoiding the Chieftain shell, but managing to put a shell into them. And that's probably because this vehicle has much, much, much better gun handling than the Chieftain. In this game here, you're going to again see me playing without any of the field mods because I don't have any of them on this vehicle. In fact, I recently sold this tank to borrow 3.5 million credits to be able to purchase consumables while they were still discounted, and then repurchase the vehicle, albeit at 3,850 credits. So I lost 3,850,000 credits. So while I lost 350,000 credits effectively, I got to borrow 3.5, which allowed me to buy the equivalent of 7 million credits worth of consumables at that 50% discount. So I actually ended up making a lot of credits from it. Definitely not something that you want to have to do. Better to just grind the credits and make sure you've got a surplus of them to keep buying the consumables while they're on half price. Hopefully that's a little bit of a tip for you, and you can do that in all of your Tier 9 reward tanks. Now, the AE Phase 1 has better gun handling without vertical stabilizers than a Chieftain prototype does if it's using vertical stabilizers. This thing has 0.08 on the turret and 0.14 when moving, whereas the Chieftain is sitting at 0.22 when moving and when turning the tank. And so that means that you can put a turbo on the AE Phase 1, and that allows you to be as fast as a Chieftain with better gun handling than the Chieftain, even if the Chieftain is having to, instead of using a turbo, use vertical stabilizers. To add on top of that, this vehicle just has a 10% rate of fire improvement on top. So that allows you to be a little bit more aggressive and to use your firepower to overpower your opponents. How many times am I going to say power in this battle? And that's definitely a tremendous advantage. So if you're the kind of player who likes to use vents, a gun rammer, or maybe just a gun rammer and try to pump up the firepower of your tank, then maybe the AE Phase 1 will actually be a better performer. And another thing about this tank as well is that it actually has really good premium rounds. So the high explosive anti-tank rounds on this tank have 340 millimeters of pen, which will allow you to challenge even the thickest of armor, albeit flat armor. So E100s, watch out. Mouse, watch out. Even if you want to be able to go through some fairly angled and side armor. For example, I'm looking at the AMX M451 here. Remember that high explosive anti-tank rounds can go through up to 85 degrees of angled armor, and so they're way better than APCR rounds when it comes to being flexible. Now, APCR rounds are still better because they have a normalization and they have way better shell velocity, which can be a huge advantage in itself. But if I had a choice of having a tank, I would have APCR as standard, hopefully with good shell velocity, and then high explosive anti-tank on my premium selection. That would be the absolute dream to have, because of just the fact that AP rounds and APCR rounds bounce off as soon as the angle goes to 70 degrees, unless they overmatch with the 3 caliber rule, which again, of course, heat rounds can't do. So I'm just trying to get some clutch shots in here against the M6Y on the enemy team, and unfortunately for him, they have way bigger weak points than the AE Phase 1. That is something that I do need to clarify though, is that the AE Phase 1's weak point feels way easier to hit than the Chieftain if the player is knowledgeable. And that is that the Chieftain prototype should be turning its gun ever so slightly to the right to be able to again use that bulge to hide the weak point. Whereas with the A Phase 1 you don't really have that luxury. You'd have to raise the gun and wiggle like this and hope that your opponents panic and miss that shot. There's also another thing that I want to highlight about this vehicle, and that is that it comes with a free large repair kit, which also repairs your tracks and all of your modules faster than a regular large repair kit would do. And that's a good example of the high explosive anti-tank rounds there. I think I would have bounced an AP off the side of the ST1, but the heat was able to go right through this side on the upper part. And that's just because of this 340 heat pen. It's absolutely monstrous. So this large repair kit replenishes automatically after the battle, and it doesn't cost you anything. And so if you're a free-to-play player as well, while you're probably not going to make tons of credits playing in an AE Phase 1, it's definitely a little luxury that you can have, that you can feel as if you have the advantages of the paying customer, even if you don't. And every little helps, and it can end up making this vehicle reasonably profitable, especially if you're running a premium count. If you're not, you're probably going to be breaking even, depending on how many premium rounds you are slamming in this tank. And so all in all, the AE Phase 1, I'd say it's probably better all in all than a Chieftain. I think having that firepower lets you be able to handle situations that the Chieftain simply can't. And I think that the gun handling allows you to snapshot in situations that the Chieftain could only dream of. And just this vehicle also feels way better to just have one build fits all kind of situation. Oh, we're being very aggressive here in against the Skoda. And now I've got to try and stop this Italian tank destroyer from being able to turn against me. And while I have to tank the 50 TP and his almost max roll there of 691, I'm more worried about the Italian auto-loading tank destroyer getting their gun around against me. And I managed with an aggressive play to shut down 2 vehicles, while albeit taking 1 round in reply from the 50 TP. And so in this kind of situation, just about setting up my line of fire. I lost so many hit points there that I can't afford to take any more shots, and the A Phase 1, its side scraping in this scenario, is rather delicious as well. Interestingly as well on this tank, I'd say the upper hull armor is better than the Chieftain. The Chieftain, unless it's using its gun depression, actually ends up having really bad upper hull armor. Although I think one thing that's pretty clunky about the A Phase 1 is when they do get your side profile, it does feel like a very long and extensive weakness to be able to try and hide. But it's something that is I'm more than willing to accept. No one's ever really saying that the Chieftain prototype has a very good side setup. And it's a weakness that I'm willing to accept, considering that everybody could be able to get this tank for just playing casually through a season of the Battle Pass. Talking about the Battle Pass, this is going to be the final one for this year, so make sure you spend all of your Battle Pass tokens before December. And aiming for just long enough there to guarantee a shutdown on the ST1. And the A Phase 1 roars once more. And I want to clarify something as well. The Chieftain game that you saw was the best one that I've had in probably about 30 games or so of playing the Chieftain over the last week of its release. This was pretty much the only game I played in the AE Phase 1. And while maybe I just got fortunate in the AE Phase 1 here, I think that's all the more impressive that we had a similar kind of esque game when I just cherry-picked the best Chieftain prototype game that I've had over the last week. So this was an ace tanker in the AE Phase 1 for 1,541 base experience, near, 6,500 combined, and we make 40,000 credits profit. Very nice indeed, although we didn't have to spam gold, and we hit all of our shells. However, there's one thing that the AE Phase 1 can't do, ladies and gents, boys and girls, and that is make big boy credits. And as we see here, it was a great game in the Chieftain, but we made 172,000 credits profit, albeit that I was running a credit booster. But it's one of those kind of tanks that you probably would use a credit booster when you are playing it. And in addition to 172,000 credits profit, we also get 7 bonds, as it does have premium status and it makes bonds as if it was a tier 10 tank. So that's one thing that your AE Phase 1 can't do. But when you're faced with the prospect of having to gamble up to hundreds of euros if you don't already have all of the premium tanks to be able to get the Chieftain, that's maybe something that a lot of us are willing to accept. So in addition to the nice profit that we made, we got 1,632 base experience, which would still be an ace tanker in this vehicle, over 7,000 damage, and our 6 kills manages to get us a top gun. And we blocked 4,260 damage. Again, just like with the conclusion to my full tank review of the Chieftain prototype, this thing just feels so darn safe on a ridgeline once you get used to moving your gun a little bit to the right to hide your weak point. And so, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that's it for today. Hopefully this helps you make a decision whether you think the FV4201 Chieftain prototype is worth it, and also hopefully it shows all of you out there who are getting all jumped up in this super hype of all of the different loots that you can be able to get from all of Wargaming's exciting casino-esque loot system. Let me clarify once again that you have options which will be just as good, if not better, albeit aren't going to be making extra credits while they're doing it. But the free large repair kit, at least that goes a long way. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that's it for today. Really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know if you have tried to get the Chieftain down below. Did you get the vehicle that you want, or did you end up with some of the vehicles that you probably didn't? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.